Lounge for another week, another film, another good time at the movies.
Another thing that we do every week.
Yeah,
it doesn't stop.
This week we're talking about Spider-Man: Far From Home, the latest film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Of course, a Marvel movie came out. You knew we were going to talk about it. There's no avoiding it.
Can't be helped.
We are a little bit late to the party on this one because the movie released on a Tuesday, which is weird, but.
Released on a Tuesday, have jobs and stuff, and we generally record on a Saturday anyway.
Yeah, we're recording this on a Friday this week, though, because, that's just the way it works with our schedule. But anyways, I'm John Aljets, and with me, as always, is the indestructible Owen Poole.
Indestructible?
Yeah, determination that is incorruptible.
Dude, I'm into that.
Yeah.
Let's go for it.
Yeah. And joining us this week is a friend from our childhood. We teased him a bit at the end of the last episode, both in terms of hinting that he was going to be on and also teasing him because he's an awkward person. And that is Michael Mendoza over here. Say hi, Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Okay, of course.
The dad joke to start us off.
The dad joke is coming through. But yeah, as we said, this week we're talking about Spider-Man: Far From Home, which is going to be kind of an interesting discussion because I feel like we have a very broad spectrum of Marvel fans here. We have me, who literally lives, breathes, and sleeps Marvel. We have Owen, who's just sees them all and enjoys them. And then we have Michael here, who actually has not seen Spider-Man: Homecoming. So you've got your super casual fan, and then you're hardcore, and then the person in between.
It's a nice broad spectrum. That's what we need.
And so you'll get some varying opinions. Actually, you'll probably just get mine and Owen's opinions, and then Michael chiming in every once in a while.
Very true.
I love how long it takes you to respond. Anyways, so yeah, we're just gonna jump into things. The way that we usually do things, Michael, by the way, is we will start off with sort of our too long didn't listen review. Just sort of one or two sentences being well, I thought this and that was it. And also we start things off, obviously, spoiler free. We will let you know when we get into the spoiler section. So let's start things off. Let's have Owen give him an example of what your too long didn't listen review is.
Sure. So I usually write this down immediately after and text it to somebody because they're interested in my opinion on the movie. So this is what I said. The movie was pretty great. Tom Holland continues to be unbelievably charming as Peter Parker, and Jake Gyllenhaal was pretty good as well. Not the best action set pieces in a Marvel movie by any means, but on the whole, solid characters, very relatable, charming, funny, witty. Enjoyed it.
Okay, Michael. Now give us your short review.
Oh, right off the bat. Okay.
Yeah.
So I found it very enjoyable as well. Tom Holland.
Yes.
I don't know the actors' names. So he was very great Peter Parker. Very memorable. Jake Gyllenhaal was pretty great, especially later on with the shift in character. Yeah.
So just pretty great overall?
Yeah, pretty great.
That's fair.
Watched.
That's a legit review. I would definitely say I've actually seen it twice now, so I've had a bit more time to think about it. I will say that the movie is entertaining. I feel like Homecoming was better, but I still think that it is a worthy entry in the MCU. Disney has yet to disappoint with Marvel movies. So, yeah, just overall good time. Definitely worth checking out. One thing before we jump into the fuller part of this review, gentlemen, I will be later on, just to let you know so you can start thinking about this, I will be asking you where this film ranks in terms of Marvel movies in general.
Okay.
So kind of be thinking as we go through where you think this falls in terms of quality of film. So let's just jump right into it with our...
We gotta rank, because if you don't rank things, then you're not a real online movie person.
It's true. You gotta rank it.
You gotta rank everything.
You gotta put a number to it, or else how do you know how we actually feel about it?
or it's like, movies have various nuances, and where you see them at a certain point in life, But no, it's just a hard ranking system.
Yeah, it's got to be a hard ranking.
There's no way around it.
There's no fluidity to it. There's no gray. It's black and white.
Yeah.
So give me a number, gentlemen. So anyways, yeah, let's jump into the non-spoilery discussion about the film. And let's just kind of give your general, a bit more long-winded, obviously, than the short review. So this film, obviously, it comes... it serves as sort of a bookend to the Infinity Saga. It very obviously falls immediately after Endgame because it deals with a lot of the fallout of Endgame. That's not a spoiler. That's in the trailer.
Yeah.
So that's a good, by the way, that's a good way of knowing if something is a spoiler.
If it's in the trailer.
Was it in a trailer? Then you can talk about it. So how did you guys feel that it did with dealing with the legacy of Tony Stark, which was a major part of this film, I feel?
It didn't get as in-depth in it as, one might have hoped, but then again, this isn't that's not what the movie's about, obviously. It's more about taking up the mantle of this person who is now dead, because it was in the trailer.
Yeah, again, guys, if you haven't seen Endgame by this point,
you got issues.
And
they're doing a re-release, so you have another opportunity to go see it if you so choose. I don't think it was so much about the legacy of... to me, this movie, I think about this movie in a very meta way, and that it wasn't as much the legacy of the character of Tony Stark, it was as much the legacy of the MCU as a whole. And to me, this movie was basically Disney saying, here is the person who is here's the character who's gonna be the central figure, the Tony Stark-esque figure.
Here's the face of stuff going forward. Yeah. That's fair.
Though also, no, that's a spoiler. I can't talk about that yet.
We'll get to it.
Yeah. In terms of legacy of Tony Stark, I'm like, Tony, bro, might need to chill a little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Just hang out.
Man,
he did drop some. He did drop something pretty big in this film. I will say that again, watching it a second time, I realized just how many times you see Tony Stark in this film.
There's a lot of murals, yeah.
A lot of just pictures, even in places that upon my first viewing I didn't catch. He's just everywhere in this movie. And it feeds into the line that is said in the trailer, which is Peter Parker says, "I see his face everywhere." And it's like, well, yeah, you kind of do, because he is literally everywhere. So it's definitely a major part of the film that I thought was actually handled rather well.
Well, it wasn't really shoved in your face.
No. But I mean, it's one of those things where we've known for a while, I think, that Spider-Man was kind of going to take over for Tony Stark eventually. It was very obvious that that's what he was grooming him for in Homecoming, and that's kind of what we figured through Infinity War into Endgame and everything like that. So this is just part of a very smooth transition, I feel. Michael, what are your thoughts on this?
With this movie, I would say they kind of revealed, we kind of knew Tony Stark is a
bit irresponsible and a bit of a dick.
Yeah, exactly. And so there were several moments throughout the movie where that exact characteristic was shown.
Yeah.
And it drives one character's motivations to a crazy level. So honestly, I just think it was a very accurate representation without making Tony Stark seem like a god. He was more like a character with flaws.
Yeah.
But that was very obvious.
But that's something that Happy touches upon later on in the film. He talks about how Tony Stark wasn't
perfect.
Wasn't perfect. Iron Man couldn't even live up to being Iron Man. He was a mess. And that definitely does show through. And
they could have explored. As I have one big issue with this movie that we'll probably have to get into come the spoiler time, but they could have driven home the connection between Tony and the villain of this movie a little more. They just kind of flash it's oh, this is why he's doing this.
Yeah,
which is kind of this. It's similar in what they did with Iron Man 3. How just someone from Tony's past was he was a dick to me 10 years ago, so I'm getting revenge now.
So now I'm going to be a supervillain.
now
And-
of all times.
Yeah.
They could have done something a little more clever with that, especially in concerning the question about the legacy of Tony Stark, because, like you were saying, it's kind of a complex legacy.
Yeah.
That he wasn't always doing good. He wasn't always the best,
He's a flawed individual.
and he could have left behind. In this movie, he leaves behind two people who are the central figures of the movie, and they both go different directions based on their interactions with him.
Yeah. I feel like that's about as accurate of a reading of sort of what Tony Stark means to this movie in particular, which I feel like that's where, because people were talking about this movie before it released as like, this is the epilogue to the Infinity War saga. And it is, but I feel like it's more an epilogue to Tony's story, which I guess you could argue that was because he was very much the driving force in the MCU for the first 3 phases. And so it was kind of his story. So this is sort of the period, as it were, to it.
Yeah, I mean his story is independent of everything else that happens, but his not his plot story, but his character story.
Yeah. Going from, the rich, asshole, basically.
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
Yeah, to, to being the guy who makes the sacrifice play
Yes.
at the end. Yeah. It almost seems like they just planned that all out.
They might have. They might very well have planned that to be the case.
Well, I mean, again, it's always fun to point out that basically phase 1 was planned for phase 1, and that was it. That was the end of their plan. And then they were like, "Oh shit, this works. I guess we got to keep going."
Keep going with the plan.
So Thanos appearing at the end of Avengers was Joss Whedon just wanting to put Thanos in, and then they were like, "Oh crap, we introduced Thanos and we have an Infinity Stone. I guess this would be a cool time to do that, so we're gonna go do that."
And they did.
And they did. And they executed it as if they weren't flying by the seat of their pants.
And they printed all the money.
They did. Yeah. So, do you guys have anything else that you want to say before we jump into spoilers? Really?
I know I mentioned this when we talked about Endgame. Fucking Tom Holland, dude.
Fucking Tom Holland.
He's so good.
He gets your goat.
He just has like a main line to my emotions. Even in because most of the time it's something sad happening, but even when something really happy happens at the end of the movie, I was just like,
Because he's a very innocent, likable kid.
Yeah.
And so just him playing that character, especially with such heavy moments, especially at the end of Endgame, even in this movie so much, he's just great.
He's vulnerable. He's which I think that's why Spider-Man in general has endured for so long and is such a huge character, is because he's by far the most relatable a superhero can get.
Yeah, he comes off as so relatable. Like we mentioned, he has this whole plan to get with MJ. That's not it's in the trailer.
It's in the trailer. Yeah.
So he has this whole plan, and it's this really convoluted, really overlong, overcomplicated plan when all he has to do is just go actually talk to her. And it's such a high school boy thing to think about and do.
Yeah, it sounds like the kind of shit that we would have thought about doing.
Oh yeah, he's stellar. He's probably, aside from Robert Downey Jr., probably the best portrayal of any of the characters in the whole of MCU, I would say.
Yeah.
Which isn't a knock on anyone else.
No. Although I will say that...
he just embodies the character of Peter Parker.
Oh, completely and totally. I will say that on the... you're talking about the relationship with MJ. Zendaya?
I think it's pronounced Zendaya.
Yeah. She, I thought, did a phenomenal job selling the, awkward high school student vibes. There's a scene... You see it in the trailer when she, guesses that he's Spider-Man. That moment, there's, interactions between them during that scene where she just seems so awkward for somebody who's such a big star. It's kind of funny to see her.
Oh yeah, and that's an example of a scene that's completely sold by the actors.
Yeah,
because this is a simple shot reverse shot, and there's so much subtext going on underneath their conversation that doesn't really. I mean, there's probably in the script you see like little notes about like what the characters might be feeling depending on the script writer.
Yeah.
A lot of times screenwriters won't even have that in there.
Or they'll just leave it up to the actors.
So they both nailed all of like the subtextualness of that scene and all the awkwardness and all the emotions in just a simple shot reverse shot.
Yeah, it was incredibly well done. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into spoilers. So you are now in the spoiler section of the podcast. If you listen any further and have not seen Spider-Man Far From Home, you are doing so of your own volition, and it's not our fault if we just ruin this entire movie for you. So you have now been warned. We are now commencing spoilers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So yeah, Mysterio's the bad guy. Which
Shocker.
I feel like is not a surprise for... No, Shocker's not in this movie. I feel like is not a surprise to anyone. Anybody who knows anything about Mysterio, that was not... I could have said that in the non-spoiler section, and I feel like there would be only one person who would be like, that was a spoiler.
Well,
like,
my impression from the trailers, I mean, I obviously knew Jake Gyllenhaal was playing Mysterio, and the way they did it in the trailers... They didn't even have any like hints that he might have been the bad guy just on its face.
Also in the
trailers.
marketing and stuff, they like during interviews and stuff, Jake Gyllenhaal would talk about like how great it was to be a hero in the MCU and all that stuff.
And so they seem to have like a concerted effort to like keep that under wraps.
But like again, anybody who knows anything about the character was calling it the whole time.
Well, yeah, everyone was calling it, but you know they could have taken some creative license and gone in a completely different direction with it if they so chose.
Well, they kind of altered his storyline a little bit because wasn't he originally just an actual sorcerer?
No.
Or no?
He was a
Or was he
magician or
just a
something.
No, Mysterio was a special effects artist. He worked in Hollywood, and he tried to become an actor, but he like kept getting like shit roles basically, or just not cast at all. So he wound up like down on his luck, and he decided, you know, what's the like number one like quickest way to become rich and famous? Basically kill a superhero. And so he decides that he's going to try to kill Spider-Man. And so in the comics, he posed as an alien who had come to Earth. And like, yeah, shenanigans happened from there. So yeah, he was a special effects artist, effectively.
I guess that's why Disney was so adamant, because they didn't want to reveal like how they slightly altered his origin story.
Yeah, because like he's... In the movie, he's not a special effects artist. I mean, he kind of is, but he's more of just a like inventor.
Well, so his whole this is my one big issue with the movie. So the movie goes, you know, Peter Parker's on vacation and Jake Gyllenhaal's fighting these like elemental monsters with the remnants of S.H.I.E.L.D. basically.
Yeah.
And they defeat the last one and everything's all well and good, and Mysterio and Peter Parker have been like bonding over the shared experience of being a superhero and having all this weight on their shoulders. And so Peter is basically giving him the glasses. We'll talk about the glasses real quick.
Yeah. Talk about so the glasses are, you saw Tony Stark wearing them in Infinity War.
Yeah.
They're like those really like boxy looking glasses that, again, they're glasses that only like Robert Downey Jr. could ever pull off. But apparently those glasses are connected to like, he has this AR, artificial intelligence called Edith, even dead, I'm the hero.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Which is so Tony Stark. And basically it's connected to like his satellite, like drone strike system and like all of this like fancy, like tech that allows him to like spy on people effectively. And it's like, yeah, sure, let's give that to a high schooler. It sounds like a great plan. So yeah, Tony Stark leaves those for Peter. Peter decides, well, no, like Tony Stark wasn't giving them to me. He was giving them to me so that I would find the next Iron Man. And he believes that it's Mysterio and winds up giving the glasses to Quentin Beck.
Which was his whole plan.
Yeah.
And so at that point,
if you want to talk about convoluted movie plans.
well, at that point is when you get I'm trying to think of comparable exposition dumps.
It's like an Ocean's 11 like, here's how we pulled off the heist.
Or it was like, remember we talked about the ridiculous exposition dump in Godzilla, King of Monsters?
Yes.
Where the villain just calls up their phone and is like, here's my entire plan, I'm telling you now.
It's basically that, like, complete with a slideshow.
Yeah.
Except this one's complete with, like, cutaways
And
to
flashbacks.
like previous movies.
Yeah, so basically it was this was in Civil War, I believe.
The BARF binaural augmented retro framing. BARF. Yeah.
Yeah, so in Civil War, you remember there's like a scene with like young Robert Downey Jr. like talking to his family before they die.
Yeah.
And
when he's given his speech to MIT.
And it turns out that Quentin Beck, Jake Gyllenhaal's character, was the creator of this like hologram system, basically.
Yeah.
And Tony basically shit on it, said this is dumb. We're not. He nicknamed it Barf just to fuck with him, basically.
Basically.
And so he decides, I need revenge now. Again, basically Guy Pearce from Iron Man 3. He shit on my idea. Therefore, I must use this same idea to get revenge on him.
And so he teams up with a whole bunch of people who got fired from Stark Industries to like pull off this like these massively grand illusions, these unrealistically huge illusions. Yeah. So like Mysterio in this one isn't just Quentin Beck. It's like Quentin Beck and an entire special effects and costuming like department.
Well,
Yeah.
honestly, with that like costume designer, didn't it seem like Quentin modeled himself after Tony Stark to the slick back hair, to the mustache and beard? So, because honestly, when he put on the glasses, I was just like, okay, so that's Tony Stark.
It was very fitting.
It
when
was,
he put the
it was
glasses
just
on.
like thematically, like I am your father figure now, Spider-Man. Put your trust in me. You know,
basically, and like a lot of the stuff that he does in fights is very much like how Iron Man would fight, flying around and blasting with the repulsors.
Yeah.
Mysterio's
Exactly,
flying around and blasting with his green hand beams. It's like
green laser beams.
they say in the movie that it's like a combination of Iron Man and Thor, and I'm like, no, it's a combination of Iron Man and Doctor Strange. Like, it's very much what it looks
Well, even
like.
MA asks.
Yeah, was that Mr. Strange?
Yeah.
She's like, Doctor Strange, Aunt May, Doctor Strange. But no, it's not him. Which, by the way, they mentioned Doctor Strange a couple of times in this movie, and like even at one point they say like he's like, well, what about Doctor Strange? Is like unavailable, which makes me think like, was that subtle hinting at Doctor Strange 2?
Probably.
That like
more than likely.
that like Doctor Strange 2 is taking place at the same time as this movie, and like he's just kind of fucking off somewhere.
Unavailable.
He's unavailable, or was he just like, you know what, fuck you guys, I'm not gonna answer your calls. Which wouldn't surprise me. Doctor Strange don't give a fuck about anybody else. He's just like, I don't care.
But yeah, that whole exposition dump in the bar, because he basically like Peter gives him the Edith glasses, and then he leaves to go back to his vacation, and then he like powers down the illusion hologram thing, and then everyone in the bar is his entire team, and they basically have like a toast and be like, to you who did this thing, who was fired for this reason, da 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 da, and it just went on and on and on. And I thought there could have been a more clever way to give the audience that information rather than just...
It was just kind of like, blah, just vomit it out onto the floor.
But they had to do... I mean, I get it, because you had to do the turn quickly.
Yeah.
Because...
They had to get the story
They really,
going.
really wanted it to be a twist. Like, they tried really hard, like we said before in the spoiler-free section, that they like... Or like we said before, they really, really, really wanted this to like stay under wraps. They didn't hint it in the trailers at all. Jake Gyllenhaal in interviews, they're really bro-y. Usually, I don't remember Chadwick Boseman and Michael B. Jordan doing like fun interviews together in the lead up to Black Panther.
Usually when you see two of the actors like being bro-y together, they were like both heroes. So like Benedict Cumberbatch and Tom Holland before Infinity War, for example, or like Mark Ruffalo and Jeremy Renner, I think were doing like some bro stuff before Endgame, like that sort of thing. You usually see heroes.
So they really wanted it to be a twist. So I guess giving us more hints early on, other than the fact that his name is Mysterio, and anyone who knows anything about Spider-Man knows that he's bad.
Or just does a simple Google search. Like, who is Mysterio? They're going to immediately get the Wikipedia article that is like, Mysterio is a Spider-Man villain. Like, first sentence, it says that.
So I get that in the sense, okay, don't give them any hints because we want the twist to have impact. And I feel like if you wanted to present that information in a more interesting way, like maybe, I don't know, something flying through the... Also, he was throwing rocks at the illusion. Like big rocks. How did it not fly through?
I don't know.
Unless the rock was an illusion
or something.
The rock might have been an illusion.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like that was something that I was thinking about the second, because the first time through I didn't even think about that. But the second time through I was like, so like, are you telling me that all of this complex digital choreography is taking into account what Spider-Man is doing?
Yeah, that's a little strange.
Like, and like one thing that I thought about when I watched it this second time, and I thought about it after the first time that I watched the movie, and I kind of thought about it a little bit more this time. When Mysterio's first fighting the water monster, he like rips it in half, but it almost looks like it was meant to be split, which makes me think like, did he mean for the clock tower to fall on it?
Maybe.
And like Peter Parker just fucked up that part of the plan, so he's just like, okay, well I tore it in half. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's
like, how does it take into account what other people are doing?
Yeah, because they show how they put it together. Like he's in like a rehearsal almost.
Yeah.
And everything is like choreographed to the letter, because when you see him flying around, he's not even there physically. It's just a projection. So yeah,
he's off somewhere nearby in a motion capture suit.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah. And like I did like the whole like explanation of how the illusions are interacting with the real world. How it's like the drones are flying around and they're like literally just blowing shit up.
Yeah.
Like I thought that was a cool explanation of how these things that aren't really there are actually like causing damage. Also, can we just like ask the question of how like just seemingly okay his entire team is with like massive casualties? They're just chill.
Well, that was another. I thought Mysterio was great for the most part.
Yeah.
I thought they could have really solidified the Tony connection a little better. Also, I didn't really understand what he had to gain from it, like being the superhero, because he kept saying like people need someone to believe in again, and he wanted to be him for whatever reason.
Which, like, I think that was just whole, like, he figures that, like, oh, there's a lot of money in being a superhero, which there is. Like, in the films, you see, like, Captain America merchandising and something. Like, you got to imagine Steve Rogers is getting a cut. Like, they're using his likeness. That someone's getting paid. But the one question that majorly raises for me is, like, okay, so let's say that you successfully establish yourself as, like, the next
What
Iron
happens
Man.
when something really bad happens?
Yeah, what happens when Thor comes back and is like, all right, let's go take this on, and you're fighting, like, an actual thing?
Yeah.
Or, like, say the quote-unquote Avengers-level threat happened in London, and, like, yeah, he's like, okay, yeah, so Nick Fury said that nobody else is coming, like, no Avengers are coming. But what happens if, like, one of them just showed up? Like, there's not really much stopping Thor from just, like, flying in and just being like, I'm here now. Like, that would, like, put the kibosh on his plan real quick as Thor goes to hit it with Stormbreaker and just flies through it.
I mean, I understand his motivation, his revenge motivation, even though I think it's a little thin.
Yeah.
But when you have that technology, you could do it. You could, if you just wanted money, you can just go rob banks and shit. Like, that wouldn't be the hard thing to do.
And especially because he's got, like, a bunch of fucking drones.
Yeah, that can do anything.
Like, just send them in. They go in, they take people out, pop, 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 pop. They pick up the money bags and they fly away. He doesn't even have to be there.
So, yeah, his whole
fucking
thing
Rob Banks,
about...
Mysterio, goddamn. Why does every villain in a Marvel movie have to do, like, this grand thing? Why can't they just be doing, like, logical stuff, like robbing banks or, like, shooting old ladies? I don't know.
Shooting old...
Yeah, I mean...
I'm sure there's money in that
Maybe
somewhere.
had he been jealous of Iron Man himself, like the power of being Iron Man, but he just seemed to have a personal grudge against Tony Stark, the guy.
Yeah. And, like, a whole bunch of people had to die because of that.
Yeah.
And, like, whole, like, cities had to be destroyed because he had, like, because Tony Stark fired me. Like...
He didn't like my invention. Also, I mean, another common motivation for a villain like that is to basically give proof of concept. Like, oh, he shit on my invention, and I'm going to prove that it actually fucking works, and he did that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't really thinking about that until like 10 minutes ago.
Could you imagine the amount of money that he could have made if instead of going about this whole like, I'm going to trick the world into thinking that I'm an Avenger, he just instead took that money to like Activision and was like, hey, let's make video games using this? Like, could you imagine the kind of video games that like barf technology would be able to bring about?
Barf tech.
That's like VR on a whole other level.
Yeah, for real.
You know, you turn this room into like a Roman battlefield, and suddenly I'm fighting like armies of like Gaul soldiers or something. I don't know why that was the first example that popped in mind, but still, you get the idea. Like, he could have just taken his tech and just made like an assload of money.
But Tony Stark didn't want it. But yeah, I mean, I think Jake Gyllenhaal's performance covers up like a lot of these flaws with his character motivation and whatnot.
Yeah,
because I think he had really great on-screen chemistry with Tom Holland, especially in their like
for sure, no doubt.
Before the turn where he reveals himself to be a bad guy. Like, I actually like wanted him to be a good guy.
Yeah, because Peter like even says to him at one point, he's like, yeah, it's really nice to have somebody to talk to about all this like superhero stuff. And it kind of makes you realize that like, you know, yeah, sure, all of the Avengers are like, they're gone. They're off doing their own thing. Like, Thor's off world, Captain Marvel's fucking wherever. I don't know, whatever. Like, who does Peter have to talk to about like the fact that he's a fucking superhero?
Just Happy and Aunt May.
And like they don't,
and Ned.
They don't really know.
Yeah,
like they're peripheral to the whole like superhero-ness because they aren't superheroes themselves, at least not in this continuity.
Don't need to get into that.
Yeah. Also, can we just talk about the fact that I immediately knew that the whole multiverse thing was bullshit when he said that this was Earth 616, because Earth 616 is the Earth designation for the comic, but this is not the comic universe, and they've established in the Marvel comics that this is Earth 199999, I think. Like, as soon as he's like, this is Earth 616, I'm like, bullshit.
Universe C-136, I think, is from Rick and Morty.
Yeah, and it's Earth, I think 12 in the DC. At least the Marvel comic Earth has an Earth designation in DC, just like DC's Earth has a number designation in the Marvel universe because they have crossed over. So of course they have to give each other designations. Fun fact: Super Sentai has an Earth designation because was it Battle Fever J was produced by Stan Lee. So
I don't even know what that is.
Super Sentai is the series that Power Rangers took all their footage from. Yeah. Okay. That was me getting super nerdy.
Okay.
I'll reel it back.
So we got a lot into the villain stuff. That's usually a pretty big deal in these Marvel movies. Where would you put Mysterio as a villain in kind of throughout the films?
Like, I liked him, but I feel like of the recent Marvel villains, because Marvel villains recently have been
good,
really good for the most part. And he, like, Mysterio was a bit of a downer. Like, he wasn't as good as some of the more recent ones. I would say of the most recent Marvel villains, I think the only Marvel villain that was worse was Jan Rog in Captain Marvel.
Oh yeah, he was pointless.
Because he was just fucking pointless, yeah. But other than that, I don't know. He's just kind of a disappointment compared to, like, you know, Killmonger or Thanos. Obviously.
Well, he's definitely not as good as those two. I would put him in kind of the grand scheme pretty highly because A, I liked Jake Gyllenhaal's performance. I thought he was really solid, and B, he really like challenges the weaknesses and insecurities of Peter Parker.
Yeah,
which I thought was effective. There's a scene that we all kind of talked about. We had a little bit of grub after we saw the movie.
Grub because you're like 50 and so you call food grub.
Yeah, fuck you. So there's a scene that we all talked about where, you know, Peter figures everything out and he goes to find Nick Fury and Maria Hill to like tell them what's going on. and it's revealed that Mysterio's there, and the whole thing is a massive illusion, and he basically like puts him through this crazy trippy illusion
like mind
maze
kind of thing.
And that scene was fucking cool.
Also, can we just point out that scene had a great moment of foreshadowing of how Peter was going to be able to beat him, because there's a moment where like he shoots out a web and it flies through Mysterio, because obviously Mysterio isn't actually there, but he tugs on it and it pulls a crane into the illusion. Like it's a good little like bit of foreshadowing that he's going to need to get inside the illusion to be able to beat Mysterio.
Yeah.
And that he can still obviously interact with the world that's there, because the world is there. He's just not seeing it. I thought that was a great little touch.
Yeah, that scene in particular, the like zombie Iron Man thing.
Zombie Iron Man.
God, that fucked me up.
That was cool.
First time I saw that fucked me up. I was like, oh no, I'm not ready. Don't do that to me.
Just watch Introduction for Marvel Zombies.
I'd watch a Marvel Zombies movie.
I would too.
Although I don't know
honestly.
if I could. I don't know how I would feel about Tom Holland eating Marissa Tomei, because that happened in the comics where Peter Parker ate Aunt May. He ate Aunt May and Mary Jane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
She's pretty fucked up. Although there is the Marvel Zombies panel because I've been doing videos for Screen Rant about this movie, obviously. And there's a panel that keeps popping up in my searches for Mysterio, which is a panel from Marvel Zombies of zombie Spider-Man eating Mysterio. And like his like dome has been cracked, and so he's just like slurping up his brains out of this bowl, basically.
nice.
Yeah. It's really gross.
But honestly, like that entire sequence is like, why go to this much of an effect? Because he was really like trying to hit Peter Parker's emotions and like every level.
Yeah.
And like, again, we run into this problem, like we said before. There's an entire team that's doing this to mentally destroy this one kid.
Yeah,
And
they're basically just fucking up a high schooler. Is effectively.
Why? I don't know. Like,
I also just wonder, like, so during that moment, he obviously like realizes that he has Peter Parker, like that he's got him, that he's like fully ensnared him. Why did he not just have like an invisible drone just like fly behind him and shoot him in the head? Like, why did he do all this stuff to like? I mean, I guess you could say like, oh, he had to get the names of the people who knew.
Yeah, that was the idea.
But like, it was a very roundabout way to get to there, especially because like, I don't know, it just seemed like a very roundabout way to get there. And then he let him get hit by a train, as if he's like, this kid's a superhero. He's just gonna like a train's gonna kill him. Real? You think that's enough?
I mean, he was pretty fucked up.
He was pretty fucked up, but like, I mean, at this point, he has to like Quentin Beck has to have Google. He has to have seen some of the stuff that Spider-Man's gone through. Like, I don't know. This is always a thought.
I don't know. It worked out.
Weird questions.
I don't know. I mean,
This is one of those times
I feel
where
like every movie you can do that.
yeah, maybe it's just one of those things where like just don't think too hard about it. Like,
It was
just
a
accept.
really well executed, interesting looking scene. That
It was probably the coolest set piece of the movie.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
The one of my issues with the movie was the action set pieces were, especially when he's like running and fighting all the drones. I was like, how is he not just getting blown
like
the fuck
turned
up?
to
Like,
Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a point earlier on in the film where Aunt May even says you can dodge bullets, but a banana hits you. So like she establishes that like he's pretty good at dodging bullets, like he's practiced
but he's
it.
getting like, there's like hundreds of drones all firing machine guns at him. It was just a little unbelievable for me.
Yeah.
So there's something I want to get clarification on, because at least your guys' opinion, because there's one part like earlier on where she said it's like your Peter Tingle's like messed up or
Like it
something,
doesn't
like
work,
it didn't work
or it isn't
something,
working right. Yeah.
because that entire sequence that you mentioned with the drones, like, oh, it's suddenly starting working again, or was it just off, or was it just nothing really?
That's one thing I think they should have explained better.
Yeah. Is like maybe they should have played up like, because in the comics and like for instance in Spider-Man 2,
Yeah.
like we saw it happen where like his powers just stopped working, like when he got particularly stressed or like was having a particularly hard time in life. So like it could just be that they were just hinting at the idea of like maybe his powers like short circuiting
Because Tony died and he's really
Yeah.
in grief about it.
maybe Spider-Man 3 it'll be a thing where like everything that's happened to him and everything will just get to him and his powers will just shut off.
But then he managed to get him back at the end.
Yeah, he always manages to get him back. That's Spider-Man's MO.
But yeah, that was one thing I actually was going to bring up too. That I thought that whole thing could have been better established.
Yeah.
That, you know, because she tosses a banana at him and it hits him in the face, and she's like, "Oh yeah, what, you get hit by a banana."
Like, I thought you could sense that sort of thing.
And
it's also just very inconsiderate for someone to throw a banana at anybody and not warn them, not go heads up. Like, she just runs and she throws it, and before, like, it's out of her hand before she even says anything. Like, she starts saying something as it's hurtling towards his face. But yeah,
that could have been better. But what did you guys think of all, like? There's one thing you get from a Spider-Man film is you get all the superhero stuff, but you also get like all the teenager stuff. What do you guys think of the teenager stuff?
I thought that the teenager stuff was extremely well done. I definitely, again, as we pointed out, like, Spider-Man's just an incredibly relatable character in that kind of aspect, and I feel like they handled very much like the teen drama side of stuff, because again, like, I related a lot to, like, Peter having this plan, and Peter, like, you know, oh, I like this girl, and, like, oh, we're gonna be in Paris, it's gonna be romantic, this is the perfect time to tell her.
You know, buy her a necklace.
When it's like, just fucking nut up and just tell her, bro. Like, just say the words. It doesn't have to be this big, grand, you know, romantic gesture. It can just be like, hey, I kind of like you. Like, want some fuck? Like, I don't know.
Hey, this isn't Zendaya's other thing, Euphoria.
Yeah, because then that's the way that it would go. Somebody would just say, want some fuck, and then there you go. Did you hear about the controversy currently going on around that show?
Every week there's a different controversy going around on that show.
Well, like, the most recent one that, like, some people are thinking is going to lead to some lawsuits is, I guess there was at one point
the animated One
Direction fanfic, yeah, with Harry Styles and Louis or whatever the fuck his name is.
I don't know their names.
Yeah,
the only one I know is Harry Styles because he was in Dunkirk.
Yeah, weirdly, I forget he was in that movie. He's not in it very much. Like, people thought that, oh, Harry Styles is going to be like the main character of this movie, and it's like he's just kind of like one of the other soldiers just fucking around on the beach. But yeah, so anyways,
I loved all the teen stuff. I thought it was a smart decision to have Ned cuz Ned in Homecoming is like a big role, and
he's his man in the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in this movie he's kind of off to the side because story reasons,
but they gave him
the reason why
girlfriend.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
They gave him this sort of like pseudo subplot
with like, having a girlfriend.
Him and Betty Brant,
which was super funny.
Yeah.
Because, like, they're on the plane and he ends up sitting next to her because
and she seems like kind of like disgusted by him.
Peter's plan to sit by MJ backfires and
horribly,
and he ends up sitting with the two chaperones. And Ned ends up sitting next to her, and then they seem really standoffish, and then they get off the plane, and they're like, oh, we're together now.
Babe.
Babe.
They're calling each other babe.
Yes.
Could you hold this, babe? Yeah, sure, babe. I'm coming, babe.
It was a really... Obviously, the filmmakers wanted him to kind of have less of a role, and it was a really funny, creative way.
Yeah, it's also just it's just a great, like, setup as well for, like, jokes.
Yeah.
Which is largely what it comes down to. And Ned, just as a character, he's the comic relief. It's sort of like what he serves. Which I will say that Jacob Batalon, I think is how you say his name, he actually does a really good job as Ned. Like,
he's great.
I think that the choice that they made in Homecoming to make Ned have a big part and to serve very much as the man in the chair, I thought really set up a great dynamic both between him and Peter, and also just having, you know, this very, like, this character who very much should not be involved in superhero shenanigans being involved in superhero shenanigans. It's great.
Also, they managed to do two things at once, which is add to the teen comedy angst and also explain how they dealt with everyone coming back after Endgame.
Yeah.
So the thing, they called it the blip.
The blip.
So there were people who weren't dusted at the end of Infinity War who just kind of moved on, and then the people came back. And so they had this really hilarious sequence at the very beginning, which was like a high school news program. And it looks like so low tech. Like, you see like the green cast on the anchor's face, and you see like the boom mic like drift in and out. And they had the hilarious like
in memoriam
little video for all the characters who died in Endgame. That was like edited by some student, and it had like the Getty Images watermark on it.
Yeah,
It was
great.
super funny.
Super low res picture of
And
Vision.
they just explained that really. They just explained that really quickly. It was established really quickly, and one of the characters, who is like also interested in MJ.
kind of like the romantic foil to Peter Parker throughout the film. Brad. They point out that he, because they're explaining like, yeah, you know, when people blipped out, they come back exactly the same age, but you know, people who didn't blip out, obviously they grew up, and so like it showed like one woman and it's like 5 years later and she looks exactly the same because she blipped, and then it's like little kid and then 5 years later and it's Brad and he's like super hot.
Yeah,
Like all the women want him. He comes back, he's all ripped and really nice, and that's what how Ned describes him.
and so that was I think that was a really clever way to explain that while also adding to the teen stuff.
Yeah, and it's also just a cool way to like introduce characters who weren't around in Homecoming.
Yeah.
You know, or to explain why characters who were in Homecoming, like some of his classmates and stuff that you saw in the background, aren't there anymore because maybe they graduated. They're all 21 now.
Well, I remember we had those questions when we watched. I think when we reviewed Endgame, we were
like, did like Ned get snapped then because Peter shows up to school at the end of Endgame and Ned is there? Like, does that mean that Ned got snapped?
He did.
If Far From Home is happening, does that mean that MJ got snapped? Did Betty Brant get snapped? Like,
everybody
yeah,
did.
Everybody
got
in Spider-Man did.
basically like his entire class, at least the named characters got snapped. Flash Thompson got snapped.
He got flashed.
He got flashed. I loved his name for like all of his followers.
Flash Mob.
The Flash Mob. That was great.
The Flash Mob, yeah.
That's also totally like what a high schooler. Like high schoolers these days, popularity is about how many followers you got. So they're all like, you know, live streaming and Snapchatting and all this sort of stuff. So he like bringing more of the high school.
Those darn Gen Zers.
God damn Gen Zers.
I'm just kidding. I have no ill will toward the Gen Z kids.
Yeah, I mean, I really shouldn't. I shouldn't say anything. So yes.
But yeah, when Peter and MJ finally have their moment at the end of the movie, that got me a little bit.
Yeah. That very awkward kiss on the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the thing that I wanted to talk about, was just like, because obviously I was talking about Zendaya like being able to catch the awkwardness of the character a little bit. That scene was just like so uncomfortable, but in like a great way, because it's like that is very much like a first kiss thing where you're both just kind of like uncomfortable about it. I'm gonna let you on something, like, listeners, if you haven't had your first kiss or anything like that, I will let you know that like your first kiss in any relationship is awkward.
That's not true.
Like, it's not super smooth.
That's not true.
Wow. Okay, then maybe we're just having like vastly different life experiences. Oh,
I mean, when you're a teenager,
Mr. JB Smoove over here.
When you're a teenager, absolutely. But when you're an adult and you like kiss
I would say
someone
even
for the
as
first
an
time,
adult, like my first kisses have never been like, they've never been like this magical like moment. It's always just kind of like we kiss and then it's like.
well,
right,
I mean, it's never
cool.
gonna. It's not gonna be a magical moment. It doesn't be awkward as fuck either.
Oh,
I guess I am JB's move.
I guess you are. Who's in this movie as the science teacher and does actually a pretty good job. It weirded me
And
out.
believes
though.
in witches.
And he believes in witches by the end of this movie. He's like a man of science. I love that moment where he's like, what are these things? How do you explain them all? And he's just like, you know, as a man of science, I just have to say, witches. Goddamn witches. There's no science on this science trip.
Yes, a science trip to Europe.
Yeah, I didn't get that part.
Whatever.
Like you go to Europe for like maybe history,
Arts and culture
or
and
art or something like that. You don't go to Europe for science class, like, unless you're spending your time in like the Alps studying the environment. Like, you're not hanging out in Venice on a science trip. And also, I'd like to point out the other chaperone was their math teacher. Like, that's a weird. You got your science teacher and your math teacher, not like an art teacher or your history teacher. Although we really shouldn't say anything. We went to France with a business teacher. So.
Yes, we did.
But yeah. So any closing thoughts before I ask you about your MCU ranking?
I had something. Where'd it go?
Plumb that brain.
It's probably gone. It's fine. I'll come. If it was that,
It'll
good,
come back up after the podcast is over.
Yeah, of course.
Michael, what about you? Any closing thoughts on the movie?
Well, there's one line that Mephisto said where pretty much he
You mean
said
Mysterio?
Mysterio, whatever.
Mephisto's a
Yeah, a
completely
demon.
different
Yeah,
Marvel character.
Whatever. So honestly, so when Mysterio said that people will believe anything nowadays, and so that line to me, it's like Nick Fury, the man that he is, paranoid as shit, destructive as shit, but he believed the multiverse theory. Like honestly, it's just I just wonder what's gonna happen next.
Although that does bring us up to something that we have yet to discuss, and that is the mid and post credit scene. I don't know how we didn't talk about this.
Yes.
So I take that as that wasn't Nick Fury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the post credits, it's revealed that Maria Hill and Nick Fury were actually Talos and Soren from Captain Marvel.
The Skrulls. Ben Mendelsohn and his wife, who I don't know the actress. So I just take it as Nick Fury wouldn't have believed it, but apparently Talos did. Which, by the way... He was like, it was all very convincing.
Yeah. If you saw my most recent Screen Rant video talking about this movie, I apologize for calling him Talos the entire video. Because, again, I had not watched Captain Marvel for a while, and so seeing the name written, I immediately go into Elder Scrolls mode.
I was about to say, playing some Skyrim.
So to me, it's Talos, but no, it's Talos.
Whatever.
The comment section hates me.
If you care that much on the internet comments, just stop.
Well, I have to read them. I mean, I don't have to.
No, I mean the people doing the comments.
Yeah, I know. Nerds'll nerd. But yeah, so in the post-credits, it's revealed that they've been Skrulls this whole time. And at first, you're kind of thinking to yourself, all right, Secret Invasion, it's happening! Woo! Secret Invasion! And it's like, no, guys, calm down. Nick Fury is alive.
And in space.
He's in space! Probably doing sword stuff. For those of you who don't know, SWORD is the intergalactic arm of S.H.I.E.L.D. Or maybe S.H.I.E.L.D. is the planetary arm of SWORD. I don't remember their dynamic. But yeah, I'm assuming that's what Nick Fury's doing. He's probably like, I'm sick and tired of all these motherfucking aliens on this motherfucking planet. So let's stop them from getting to Earth. Ow.
Stop him in the first place.
Yeah. He's just on a ship hanging out with a bunch of Skrulls in space. Doing what? We don't know. We'll find out in later movies, I guess. But the one big of the end credits things that I feel like the big one in terms of this movie is the mid credits, where we see not only the return of J.K. Simmons as the best version of J. Jonah Jameson, period.
Give me pictures of Spider-Man.
I will stand by that J.K. Simmons is just J. Jonah Jameson. That's just who he is in reality. He's just that character. But this time he's a sort of Alex Jones-esque InfoWar version.
That's what they did. It's dailybugle.net.
Yeah. And even the logo kind of looks like the InfoWars logo. And the set and everything looks like the InfoWars. It was so blatant, I'm waiting for Alex Jones to sue. Yeah, and it's revealed that he got a video from Mysterio that was doctored to make it look like Peter Parker
killed him
and just killed a bunch of people. And yeah, he also revealed that Spider-Man's Peter Parker. Which, I knew that something like that was going to happen as soon as Peter said, yeah, execute them all. I was like, someone's going to twist that word.
Oh, yeah.
Someone is going to twist that. And, that's exactly what happened. And so now, as of that mid-credits, not only does the entire world know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but also the entire world thinks that he's a monster.
Which, I mean, that's kind of how the Spider-Man story goes.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Spider-Man has always kind of been he's been both loved and hated, depending on who you ask in the world.
Yeah.
Of course, and it is almost always J. Jonah Jameson's doing that makes him a villain. But as far as the entire world knowing his identity, that's only really happened once in the comics, and that was the Civil War story arc where he revealed that he was Spider-Man, and that led to where I hope they aren't going with this to what is easily one of the most reviled comic arcs in comic book history, which is One More Day. If anybody has heard anything about One More Day, it is, you probably heard about it in terms of like people going, man, that storyline sucked. Do you guys know about One More Day?
I do not.
No.
So basically, the story of One More Day was somebody was trying to get to Peter Parker and wound up shooting Aunt May. Because obviously that's why you have the secret identity, to stop people from attacking your loved ones. That's the purpose of it. But so Aunt May is in the hospital, whatever, so Peter Parker tries to like figure out a way to save her life, and the demon Mephisto, which is funny that you actually made that slip of the tongue, comes up to him and is like, all right, I will save Aunt May's life, but in return, you and Mary Jane were never married, because at this point in the comics they were married. He's like, I'm taking your marriage away. And they agree to do it. And so basically what winds up happening is Mephisto erases from everyone's memory that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, makes it so that Mary Jane and Peter Parker were never married. In fact, he makes it so that they were never even together. And obviously, because no one knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, Aunt May is fine. And actually, at the end of the comic, and not even at the end of that comic, at the end of a later comic, it's revealed that MJ made an additional deal with Mephisto to take the memory of their relationship from Peter, but she had to remember every single second of it. So she, like, for, like, the next, I would say, like, dozen or so issues is just an emotional wreck. And, like, Peter Parker's like, what's wrong? But yeah, it's, like, why a demon would want their relationship is, like, a really stupid explanation. He's basically like, a love like yours only comes around once in a millennia, and I want to rob the universe from a love like yours. So I want to take it away, so God, because fuck God, I'm not going to let him give you that kind of love. It's really dumb, guys, and I hope that's not where they're going with this. I hope Mephisto isn't going to pop up and be like, you never dated MJ. Oh!
Well, I think the reveal sort of is one thing that I remember thinking a lot in this movie is there's a lot of subtle nods to the original Iron Man movie.
Yeah.
Not only do you get a scene from the first Iron Man movie when one of Mephisto again. One of Mysterio's cronies
was in the first Iron Man.
In the first Iron Man being yelled at by Jeff Bridges.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where Happy comes to rescue Peter from the Netherlands, where everyone there is just super nice.
Super nice. Everyone's so nice.
And
like, even the prisoners put themselves back in the jail. It was the best. Like, big open jail door. They could just walk out, and the guy just closes the door.
Yeah. And so he's basically, like, designing a new suit for himself in the plane. There's, like, some kind of fancy 3D printer thing. I think it was, like, the same thing they used to make Vision's body or something.
Yeah, it kind of looked vaguely similar
anyway,
to it.
There's a lot of, like, subtle hints to the first Iron Man because he even, like, puts his wrist under the hologram to, like, test out what he's making, and Happy kind of looks at him in, like, a knowing way, like, because they were just talking about
because he's
Tony.
kind of like, just like, this looks familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, he even turns on AC/DC.
Yeah.
I love Led Zeppelin. Goddamn fucking Peter.
And then at the very end, before he, like, goes web swinging with MJ, there's, like, a shot of him with his mask off, and he says something to the same effect of, like,
he's like, I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of the deception.
Which makes you think, oh, maybe
he's coming out
like at the end of Iron Man 1. But he's really just talking to Happy and Aunt May about their relationship.
He's like, are you dating?
So I think the reveal of his identity is basically, like, just drawing more parallels between him and Tony Stark.
Yeah. And, like, also, as we said, with the whole, like, suit building, there's actually a shot where Peter puts on, like, a holographic version of, like, a glove.
I said that.
Well, you were talking about the suit building specifically.
Yeah. And then I said he put his wrist in the thing.
Well, it's almost like exactly framed up just like it was in Iron Man, which is just fantastic. I'm really tired, so if you said something and I didn't catch it, that's my bad. But yeah, so anyways, so now the world knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and they all hate him. So things are not going to be going great for the webhead.
Maybe it'll be just like fake news. because it doesn't seem like the dailybugle.net is a very reputable
Because it was
news.
another news company that revealed it, and then it said from the Daily Bugle, controversial Daily Bugle.
But but here's the thing, and like I'm about to say something that might piss off some of our listeners, but it's the truth. So like, just chill for a second, and that is that the kinds of people who believe fake news tend to be the kind of people who listen to InfoWars. So like, even though it is fake news, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to believe it.
No, I mean that like Peter could deny everything and say it wasn't him.
But like, no one's going to believe that. Like, it's how the first movie or how the next movie is going to start. It's going to start with like Peter like living on the street because he can't go home, and like he's just going to be like in some shit.
So do you think the next Marvel movie will be a Spider-Man movie?
No, the next one, I think the next one we're supposed to get will be Black Widow, more than likely.
And that's just a flashback movie.
Yeah,
isn't
it's probably. We don't know, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it is. But after that, we don't know when we're getting the next Marvel movie because none of them are in production outside of Black Widow, which is probably a good thing because I feel like the healthiest thing for the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now, take a break. Maybe just chill. Maybe like a year or so. Just go without a movie. Maybe put Black Widow in there because it doesn't really connect. It's just kind of like, hey, look, here you go. You get a movie. Hooray. Maybe Hawkeye's in it. I don't know. There you go. Yippee skippy. It's a spy movie. But then just like sit around and just like chill. Which from what I heard, that's what they wanted to do after Endgame, but Sony was like, no, we're putting out a Spider-Man movie. And so they're like, guys,
I guess we'll make one and make all the money.
Well, because from what I heard, Marvel wanted this movie to be released next year. They were like, hold off. Like, let Endgame cool down a little bit. But Sony was like, no, we're putting one out this summer. Which is why, like, because a lot of people were like, well, it kind of takes the wind out of Endgame's sails a little bit for us to know, obviously, that Spider-Man's coming back at some point in Endgame because, like, he has a movie after it. But it just is what it is. So anyways, guys and gals, if you have made it this far in the episode, thanks for listening.
Well done.
Yeah, very well done. We figure we'll ask you our question of the week, which is simply, have you seen Spider-Man Far From Home? What'd you think about it? Did you think that the Mysterio reveal was more well done than we thought it was? Or are you like us and were capable of doing a basic Google search and already knew that Mysterio was going to be a villain, so it doesn't really much matter? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below if you're listening to us on YouTube. Or if you're not, you can tweet at us at Starwipe Lounge. Use the hashtag Starwipe Lounge so it becomes a little bit easier to find your comments. Alternatively, you can get a hold of us individually. I am at Bender Waffles and Owen here is at OwenScott_P. You can find us both on Twitter and Instagram. Michael, you have a Twitter. Do you want to plug it?
I honestly forgot the name.
It's at Pandarium. I will have a link.
No, I think it's at Pandarium234.
I'll put it down in the comments. Michael, do you have anything else to plug? Anything you got going on?
No.
Maybe buy life insurance?
Life insurance.
I don't.
Or health insurance?
No.
Some kind of insurance?
No. Don't call.
Michael doesn't want to talk to you. Don't call. So anyways, guys and gals, thank you for listening. Michael, thank you for coming on to the podcast.
You're welcome.
I know that we kind of forced you into doing this.
I didn't even know. I didn't listen to the last episode. So when I came down to Reno, I found out the first way, oh yeah, you're doing the podcast.
Yeah, I told you as I was picking you up from the airport, I was like, hey, you're going to be on the podcast. You have no choice in the matter.
I was like, wait, what?
We already announced on the last episode that you're going to be in it. So you have to show up. So anyways, guys, if you want more Michael, by the way, feel free to tweet at us and be like, we want more Michael on the Starlight Lounge, and we'll work it out.
You one person who will more than likely be John under a different account.
Yeah, we're just gonna make a bunch of burners.
I do have like 3 or 4 Twitter accounts from all like my different projects, so I could just like tweet at myself, just be like, we want more Michael, woo.
Me and my valuable
Michael or
input.
Riot.
It'll just be a solo podcast, just the Michael Lounge.
Just 50 minutes of pure silence.
In the lounge with Michael. It's literally, it's just, okay, thanks for listening, bye.
ASMR with Michael Mendoza, just
heavy breathing into the microphone. Just
occasional scratches.
I just pissed off a lot of people by doing that, by the way. Anyways, guys and gals, we'll catch you next week where we are going to be talking about
something.
Probably Midsummer.
Oh, yes. Midsummer.
Yes, we're going to talk about
dragging you to Midsummer.
Yes. It's going to be another late review, but fuck it. Like, if you're the kind of person who wants a review for Midsummer, you probably already saw it anyways. So, whatever. You get to hear us talk about the latest horror film from the director of Hereditary. So, we'll be doing that next week. Until then, guys and gals, catch you in the next one.